Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to Something to Talk About Live. My name is Jamie Hinkle. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Learning and Inclusion Manager at PFLAG National. Just like every week, I'm going to bring in Jean Marie Nevada to lead today's conversation.
Jamie Hinkle. Hey, Jamie Hinkle.
How are you?
Well, I'm having an okay day, although I was super excited yesterday. I got my COVID booster, and today I'm having some side effects. So I am pre-blaming anything I say that is not appropriate on my fever.
I think that is completely fair. I think that is completely fair. Now, Jean Marie, are the days getting shorter in Palm Springs?
They are. It's kind of sad. It's a little sad. I'm going to have to start going to bed at 6 p.m.
Well, whatever you need to do to stay healthy. Well, I will see you in a little bit.
Bye, Jamie. Hey, everybody. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. My pronouns are she and ella, and I'm the Director of Learning and Inclusion at PFLAG National. Every single week, we get together to talk about something related to LGBTQ inclusion, and this week, we are talking about Bi Week 2022. But the article that we are using to get into this conversation brings us to a couple of different points, and I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion. So, for those of you who like reading the article, I think this week's article is fascinating. I mean, it's really, really interesting. It was written by Anna Marks, and it's called Harry Styles Walks a Fine Line. It is a really, really great piece. Really get you thinking, I can promise you that. And you can access that or the link to that article at straightforequality.org/discussion series. We also have some discussion questions up there for you. But as I said, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and we have some really great people. So let me just tell you who we're going to be bringing in, and then we'll bring our guests in and we'll get this going. So we have Raina Deerwater, who is the Entertainment Research and Analysis Manager at GLAAD Media Institute. We also have Nicole, who is the President and Executive Director at Still Bisexual. And we have coming back to the show, Mackenzie Harte. I'm from PFLAG's Learning and Inclusion team, and Mackenzie is the Learning and Inclusion Coordinator at PFLAG. So let's bring in our guests and get the conversation started. Hello, everybody. Oh, and there's Nicole. Hey, Nicole. Hey, Raina and Mackenzie. I'm so happy that you're all here on this very unpredictable show because of me, but I think we're going to have fun. So before we get started, I want to make sure that people know all about the organizations that you are representing. So maybe we can go Raina, Nicole, and then Mackenzie, who can teach me what PFLAG is. Tell us a little bit about the org you're representing and what you do there.
Hi, thanks so much, Jean Marie. As you said, I'm Raina. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Entertainment Research and Analysis Manager at GLAAD, which is a LGBTQ media organization that does work in the entertainment space and in journalism about images of LGBTQ folks in media. I work in entertainment research, which means I do reports where we are on TV and the Studio Responsibility Index, which look at television and film respectively, and LGBTQ representation therein. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Kristal. I'm president and founder of Still Bisexual. We started off as a social media campaign where we would tell video stories of people talking about how they came to embrace their bisexual identity, pansexual identity as being lifelong. And we expanded into becoming a full-fledged organization where we do mental health advocacy for the bi+ community, education, and we just raise bi visibility in general.
Thank you so much. And Mackenzie, I'm not sure about this PFLAG thing. Tell us what you do.
Well, first, I just want to say how excited I am to have Nicole and Raina on. Nicole and Raina are both incredible at their work, and I'm so excited that they are on this show. But I'm Mackenzie Harte. I use they, them pronouns. I am PFLAG National's Learning and Inclusion Coordinator. And what my team focuses on, which Jean Marie is also on, is frankly learning and inclusion, quite literally in our title. But we really focus on education and helping people better understand LGBTQ issues and be more mindful about being allies and being inclusive in the work they do and in their day-to-day lives. For example, a show like Something to Talk About Live, which we are here to do today, to talk about different issues that come up in LGBTQ+ spaces, to help audiences better understand them and better be able to facilitate conversations about these issues. So I will turn it back to Jean Marie.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So, Raina, I want to start with you. Our article does very much get into a conversation about queerbaiting. And in fact, I grabbed a couple of pieces of the article and the author, Anna Marks, wrote, Mr. Styles has, with his last 2 album releases, been accused of queerbaiting, in this case using his queerness to burnish celebrity without actually saying that he's queer. And some of the examples that she provides are interesting. Carrying the rainbow flag, wearing a green carnation, a tattoo of George Michael lyrics. I'm just saying. So could you explain in a little bit more detail? I'm a huge George Michael fan. So what is queerbaiting? Where did the term come from? Where does it apply? Where is it not applicable? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I would love to. I think we should all get George Michael tattoos. Queerbaiting is a term that got popularized about a decade ago in sort of the early 2010s in fandom spaces online, and it's about this very specific phenomenon, media, especially television, where there would be characters that a lot of audiences saw as having chemistry or having a romance, having sexual tension, but nothing ever was confirmed on screen. And it wasn't just that. It wasn't just like, oh, fans thought they were queer, but they weren't. There was a trend of sort of the showrunners and the marketers and the networks were leaning into it and being like, oh, look, we want these audiences to watch our shows, but we don't want to like do a risky move. The air quotes are very purposeful because it's not risky to have queer people. We're everywhere. But the audience, the people behind the shows didn't want to actually include queer people, but they would sort of like drop little hints so they wouldn't lose their queer audience. So the term queer baiting is quite literal in that sense. Not literal in that there's bait in a fishing line involved, but it's very much like you are being pulled into these shows with the promise that a character will be queer, and at the end of the day they are not. So the show can maintain this sort of heteronormative narrative. And a lot of, over the past decade, the term has been used in a lot more spaces than just on these sort of like fictional narrative TV shows. But I personally, and like looking at the sort of way that like internet language evolves, I think I caution against using it like how this article does about real people, because there's no one writing like, I mean, there are people writing Harry Styles, but that's in a different context. But like, he's not a fictional character, and like real people don't have that thing of like the writers are trying to get us. So I think queer baiting can be used for situations where queer people feel like they are being manipulated, and that's fair, because like as an audience we have a very large history of being manipulated. But the term queer baiting specifically does apply to like fictional people and like storylines that are written to get a queer audience in but never deliver the actual representation.
Interesting. So what I would love to hear from all of you, and whoever wants to jump in first, we can do this. Can we give some examples of what this looks like? So we've talked about TV examples. This article talks about it in the context of Harry Styles, which kind of takes it into a whole different area. Can we get some examples of this? Mackenzie, Nicole, Raina, any of those? So maybe if people are not quite understanding what it is, where have they maybe seen this?
So Raina will probably punch me in the face if I talk about Supernatural, so I will let Raina talk about Supernatural. But an example I will give, and it's not a perfect example, but the Pixar movie Luca that came out, I believe, in 2021 last year, that was marketed as two boys who become very close. A lot of queer kind of metaphors, a lot of being kicked out of your home, being exiled because of your identity, needing to hide who you are. A lot of those narratives were overarching, and to me, as someone who's consumed a lot of queer media, felt like a queer film. It had a lot of those same tropes, but the production company behind it wouldn't identify it as queer. It was saying, oh no, this is for everyone, and kind of refused to take that step. And the conversation around it in the right wing and the homophobic areas of the internet became about, oh well, it can't be queer, it's about two young boys. You can't be queer when you're young, which is not true, as I'm sure many of us may have realized at a young age. But that is one example that comes to mind for me, because it's very much set up to draw you in, to kind of identify in that way, maybe not intentionally, maybe intentionally, we don't know for sure, but then being kind of taken away from us as a community in a way.
Other examples?
I mean, I do think we have to sort of mention pop stars and their music videos a little bit, even though that's more personal and could be crossing over into controversial territory. But I mean, I feel like Madonna is the OG queer baiter, with like kissing Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and that sort of stuff, right? I mean, maybe Madonna is queer, I don't really know, but if the definition of queer baiting to some extent is behaving in a queer way and not officially coming out, then I guess that would also qualify, right? Because you get a lot of press around it. It helps sell records, that sort of thing. But I mean, as far as television shows, we did a whole campaign with Still Bisexual called Why Won't They Let Me Say I'm Bi? And we have a bunch of memes of people, of characters who behave bisexually, but never really cop to being bisexual. So that's how it can be damaging in the media, is when you constantly see your behavior represented without any sort of positive validation or labeling. Not that you have to label yourself, but no one's saying I'm bi and I'm proud of that. You don't see that a lot. You'll see this person figuring things out and then they become gay, or they just kind of go back to heterosexual behavior.
Yeah. And I think that it's also frustrating, because I think as people become more sophisticated in understanding identities, you watch those same characters or those same individuals and you're like, why aren't you saying this? Because it becomes more obvious than ever. Raina, I know Supernatural is right there.
Mackenzie ascribed that to me. I think it's just like a very often cited work in that space, and that like it ran for like 15 seasons and had a fan base that was very intense about two male characters getting together, and the creators denied that there would be anything, but they like would drop hints in the dialogue of like the boys looking at each other, but they were very much, to use this dated term, we're like, no homo about it. And then at the very end, after 15 years, one of them said he loved the other one, and then like got sent to super hell. So that's an example of what not to do. But yeah, and also a thing that came to me when Nicole was talking about bi erasure is like the film adaptations of Wonder Woman, where like she's bi in the comics, and then like in the films, because they're for like a bigger audience and they're like not saying that, like they'll do a little like winky winky, this is an island of women she came from, but like in the films, like she's in love with Chris Pine is the only person she will ever love, even though it's like she's been around for 100 years, she's not thinking about anyone else. So like things like that, of like a lot of times it's from like source material that does let the characters be bi or queer, and then like once it's on a different platform, it is less so.
I hadn't even thought about Wonder Woman, but it's totally true, because the comics are so different. So here's the question, because I want to get into the connection to bi erasure, but one of the things that sort of is in my head is, can real people queer bait? Is this just something that we can talk about as larger entities, or can this be a real conversation? And Mackenzie, maybe you want to jump in on that one.
So I kind of agree with what both Raina and Nicole have said so far. I think that using the term queerbait in the academic sense that it is used in, it's best to avoid using it when applying to real people, because it is, again, not necessarily something that a real everyday person can do. But I do agree with what Nicole was saying about how celebrities and pop stars might use some of their content as a way to queerbait. So doing music videos that hint at something but never confirming it, and everything along those lines, because that's not necessarily them as a real person. That's almost them as a character that has been constructed. And so I think that is something that there's a conversation to be had. I don't know if the word in that case would still be queerbait, or if it would be a different kind of academic exploration. But I think that was a very interesting point that is definitely something that should be paid attention to, because in a capitalist society, our content and our art has become kind of purchasable entities, pieces of content, and are a continuation of business strategy.
Yeah. I was reading, from the article, there was a really interesting comment, and I just want to sort of share this with people. The article that we had said that if Mr. Styles contends with a closet, it was built by a homophobic culture, not by any action of his own, and accusing him of queerbaiting his fans works like a trap. He can only really deny the accusations by coming out and identifying him in a way that would not be wholeheartedly accepted. And so the author actually asks us to consider for a moment, is it really so inconceivable that one of the most famous people in the world could be trapped in the same closet that everyday normal people actually are? And I think that's such an interesting thing to think about. So these accusations of queerbaiting, they do have an impact. We kind of talk about this in an abstract way. We talk about it as an academic enterprise sometimes, but there are real implications. It's the fact that this article exists, and if you Google the topic, you're going to find hundreds that are sort of like it. It does have an impact on people. And I think it has an impact on different parts of the community in different ways. So Nicole, maybe you can talk about this, specifically on bisexuality, can a bi person actually queer bait? Can this actually happen? And is this the dynamic that we are potentially seeing with Harry Styles? And what does that mean?
I mean, I think it's really dangerous to say Harry Styles is queer baiting when only 12% of bi men are out to the people they're closest to in their lives. So just because Harry Styles is a public figure doesn't mean that he feels any safer. In fact, he probably feels less safe to come out, especially, you know, in light of all the heightened attention. I think, you know, it feels really safe probably to dance around on stage with a flag and you know, come off ambiguously as an ally. But like, what's wrong with that? Like, that seems like amazing representation. And as someone, you know, who came of age in the 90s, like, I would kill to see someone dancing on stage with a bi pride flag. Like, how could anyone criticize that in any way? Like, that just to me comes from a place of privilege of this generation, that we've made such progress that they can sit back and criticize, you know, what's marketed as allyship, but who really knows? I mean, I think it's mainly a positive thing. I think some instances it might not be, but another example would be like Cardi B, right? Like, Cardi B got accused of queer baiting with Normani in the Wild Side video, I guess, and they were naked and covered like this because one of them was pregnant, covering it up. That was the reason it was staged like that. But also, like, Cardi B is vocally bisexual, but no one thinks of Cardi as being bi because Cardi's partnered with a man. So, you know, like, it just doesn't seem fair. It seems like the bisexual always ends up getting criticized.
Me too, though, appreciate Cardi B going on Twitter to remind everybody that she's bisexual in the way that only Cardi B actually can. But I always feel that way about Lady Gaga too, that, you know, she's talked about it so openly, and yet because she has most often been seen with men, everybody continues to go back to the she must be straight then. Other people on this one, Nicole, Mackenzie or Raina, any comments on bi people queer baiting and the impact of what happens when this occurs? Because I think that's a really interesting point that Nicole brought up about it's a kind of act of privilege to go to this level of criticism when in fact, you know, there's an argument to be made that this is actually progress.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Nicole was saying. I think it's like really exciting to have someone with such a massive platform be like, you know, like if a kid wants to come out, they like go to his concert and are like, help me come out. It's like, it's very sweet. And like, I think it's also like, it's not for us to say like this person's identity. And I think like anyone who has a big platform should use their voice for like marginalized communities because they can. And so I think that that's really exciting. And that doesn't have to reflect on an individual's identity, but also like it may, like who are we to say? And so I think there's also a big thing of like people not like an individual's identity doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be at the forefront. Like if a creator doesn't want to, like there was this thing that happened about a couple years ago with a YA author, Becky Albertalli. She wrote the book that the Love, Simon movie was based on, and she has written these queer things, and people sort of attacked her on the internet. It was kind of similar to Cardi B, except like this is a YA author, so like they probably don't have similar lifestyles. But anyway, but she basically like came out as bi because people were like, what gives you the right to write these stories? So I think it's a thing of like reminding people that like even though like social media is prevalent and we do get some insights, like if public figures choose to share parts of their life, like that's great, but like you're not entitled to parts of certain people's lives, and like if someone wants to like share that with you, that's great, but like it's not our right to know, and like, you know, just because of the certain things they put out in the world. And so I think like Nicole makes a really great point that like don't go to queer baiting immediately when someone could just be like doing what they do and like being who they are, and society, they like either don't want to talk about their identity, or society's like, you're not, like how everyone calls Lady Gaga an ally, like you said, they're like, we love her as an ally, and then Lady Gaga's like, I wrote this song about a woman. It's wild.
You know, it's really, the more as you're all talking, I'm sitting here and I'm kind of having the picture is getting bigger and bigger for me, because there are so many different dynamics that are going on at the same time when this happens, for the individual who's is being accused, as well as those who are accusing, and then everybody who jumps in on it, which is in a way that we probably have never seen at this scale before. Mackenzie, anything to add on this one before I go to the question that there are a couple that I really want to make sure we get to.
I think it's part of this conversation is interesting because it kind of centers around the incorrect idea that there is such a thing as bisexual privilege, that a bi person can quote unquote always just go be with someone of a different gender and hide, and in that way, and people see that as a privilege rather than an attack on rights. That we want to be seen as who we are, we want to be safe to be seen as who we are, and that is all part of it. That's not a privilege that we can drop everything and do that. Like if we fall in love with someone of the same gender, that is not a privilege to say, oh, you know what, it's actually not safe, I want to be perceived as straight and have to leave that relationship, which is what some people very ill-informed will say about that. And I think that the conversation about queer baiting kind of comes up with that, where there are people have modes of genuinely exploring their sexuality and exploring their sexual identity, and if they are seen as a public figure and they are doing that, that might be seen as queer baiting, when it is something that they are trying to express or to explore as part of a bi identity, which is very, it's a wrong thing to kind of place on people, to say, oh, you're just queer baiting, when we don't know that for sure. And I think it ties into a lot of ill-advised ideas about bisexuality.
Well, and that was actually sort of where I wanted to go to the next place with. Everyone has, or should have, they don't all have it, but we should have the space to explore your identity, explore it safely, to be able to express it. All of us have had journeys to getting to who we are today. Is it often, is exploration of identity and queer baiting, are they often being conflated? And are we creating a more hostile environment? One of the examples that I'm thinking about is the other week, I was watching video of Bad Bunny, who during a performance kissed both a man and a woman on stage. And a lot of people started going back to what is Bad Bunny's story. And I sort of stepped back and I wondered, is this a symbol of allyship, or is maybe Bad Bunny just exploring kind of his identity? Do we have a way to see what that line is, or should we just caution each other to be a lot more careful on this? Is that where our conversation needs to go? Anyone? Everybody's on mute. I'm like, I'm the only one here speaking. Maybe it's my fever.
That was like really loaded. Like, I feel like I need to write an essay now. Like, I mean, I think, I can see how people could criticize Bad Bunny, because it's kind of going to the old, like, not to keep talking about Madonna because I'm old, but like it goes back to that Madonna wheelhouse that is so ripe for criticism, right? But like, also, like, who cares? Like, they're performers, let them kiss them. Like, I just don't get why people have energy for this but can't like pay attention to anything political, like, at all, like,
yes,
that matters in the world. I don't know, maybe I'm just like,
no, I like the fact that, Nicole, you and I are creating like the angry Gen X side of the screen.
Yeah, that's us. Hello.
It just kind of fits. Like, we have like it all going on. Any disagreement on that, Mackenzie or Raina?
Not a disagreement. I actually agree, as the optimistic millennial. I don't know. But
is there?
I don't know. I don't think that's a type. I just described myself. But I think also another nuance to look at with the Bad Bunny, like, not to be like Bad Bunny versus Madonna, also would be a great collab. But I think it's also, like, Nicole mentioned that stat that about like only 12% you said of bi men are out. I think there is a difference with gender here. And I think like it's really like, it's like, two women kissing has often been like sexualized and used for the male gaze. And then like, two men kissing has been like, yeah, this is taboo. Like, that's obviously oversimplified, but I think the act of like Bad Bunny kissing a woman and then kissing a man and then being like one of the biggest stars in the world, and it's like, what of it? Like, what are you going to do about it? I think seeing there is a way where it's like whatever his identity is aside, like those images, seeing such a positive image of two men kissing and of like a man kissing a man and a woman, like that's like the most sort of like, this is bisexuality 101. Like, that's, it's more nuanced than that. But I think those images like can be very positive to have them like on such an elevated platform with someone as like stadium sellout, like as Bad Bunny.
Mackenzie, do you have something you want to add on that?
I also, I wanted to add, when we talk about these pop culture moments that are ultimately pretty tame kisses, that Madonna and Britney did not make out on stage. It was kind of a quick peck on the lips, as it was with Christina and as was with Bad Bunny's performance, and I believe Adam Lambert at some point in the late 2000s. But we have conversations about these moments as these big moments because they're queer, and unfortunately, unfortunately, they are kind of big moments because it is still new to a lot of people and it's not aired on television. But it's just another reminder that a kiss is not equivalent across different identities, that it is something that will be different community to community and depending on a person's identity. And something else that I wanted to mention is I think that these conversations become very focused on individual persons, and I think and on individual people, individual creative teams, which I think completely makes sense because they're who we connect to as people who will consume this content and will watch the media. But I think that the bigger picture issue here is that we have a studio system and a music industry, and we have all these industries that are connected that are very much not pro LGBTQ plus still. However, it is now profitable to be pro LGBTQ plus, and so presenting pieces of media that will draw in an LGBTQ audience for profit and then not commit to it because of some of these outdated ideas where they still want to appease people who are anti-LGBTQ in their audience. I think that is kind of the larger issue here, where I don't think queerbait would be a word if that system wasn't what it was. And so I think that that's something that through this conversation, I'm realizing more and more that we have conversations about these individual figures and individual creative teams, but it really is created by a system in which these, where identity politics are made exploitable and made profitable.
I have to just step back for a second. And I'm having this moment where I'm thinking the fact that this conversation exists, the fact that we actually have the space to have this conversation, we have enough to talk about on this conversation actually is kind of a sign of how much progress we've actually made on this. I mean, this is not a discussion we necessarily would have even had 10 years ago with sort of such a plethora of options and all of the different ways that it's showing up. So I'm kind of watching the clock because we have about 4 minutes left. I want to make sure that we cover something really important, which is sort of was the center of what got us to do this show, which was tomorrow's the start of Bi Week 2022. So I'd love to do a quick round robin and maybe start with Nicole and Raina and talk about, what are you and your organizations doing on this? Do you have any special programs rolling out? Are you spotlighting anything? What should people look for?
I can go first and say that here in West Hollywood, I believe there is going to be an outdoor kind of barbecue event happening from 2 to 5 in Plummer Park. I had to step back from organizing that due to capacity, unfortunately, but I want to uplift it. So if you are in the LA area, I believe this is going to be a fun event, and I am excited to uplift that. We're going to be doing some online content as well, just sort of raising bi visibility throughout the week. It's a pretty mellow, we've been in COVID and the pandemic. It's not going to be like the big Bi Pride March we had in 2019. We're hoping to get back to that, but everyone is just so burnt out. So that's where we're at.
Totally understand. Also, once again, a reminder that the bi community, hands down, has the best naming structure for everything. That I did not miss barbecue. Raina.
Yeah, I can. So GLAAD's going to be posting content like various interviews and things with people in the Bi Plus community. So you can just check our social channels. It's at GLAAD everywhere. Very exciting. Also, it's a plug because I know just for like, if you do want like some bi media where they're like saying the word, check out the newest season of High School Musical, the musical, the series. Speaking of those, only 12% of bi men who are out. We got another one. That's just a personal plug of some good media because it's my job to make sure we elevate those.
Excellent, thank you. And Mackenzie, I know you're teaching next week for some stuff, but what else is going on?
Yes, so PFLAG will have bi-week content on our social media. Our social media manager, Greg, is fantastic. I believe there is a landing page with some resources available. Additionally, we do have a couple episodes of our PFLAG Academy online that focus very specifically on bisexual plus identities. And to quickly describe the word bisexual plus here is a word that means anyone who can be attracted to more than one gender. So bisexual plus will include bi people, pan people, omni people, some queer people who have multi-gender attraction, fluid people. So for anyone who is attracted to more than one gender, you are welcome to celebrate in Bi Week. And I just wanted to make that very clear.
Thank you. Because I know people always ask about the plus, and I love it. And I love the explanation for it. Well, Nicole, Raina, Mackenzie, thank you for being here. Thank you for having this conversation. I was so excited about this, and it did not disappoint. I have a feeling we could probably go even longer, but 30 minutes. Thank you for everything that you're doing too. And hopefully everybody can come back and we can do this when I don't have a fever and can really actually be logical. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are wrapping up this week's show once again, and letting everybody know that we are also coming up on Banned Book Week. So now is the best time ever for you to check out PFLAG's Read with Love program, which is pflag.org/readwithlove. Figure out how you can observe Banned Book Week with readings, but even more importantly, by replenishing things that are being stolen off of bookshelves and denying young LGBTQ people a chance to see themselves in literature. So once again, that's pflag.org/readwithlove. We'll be back with another fantastic show next week. Please stay safe out there. If you can get boosted in spite of a rough day after, please go do your boosters so we can all be together safely. We end the same way, reminding people to run fast, laugh hard, and most of all, please be kind. If you need help, please visit us at pflag.org. We'll see you again next week on Something to Talk About Live.